It's fair to say that investors have been loving lithium stocks over the past few years. So today we're going to unpack why investors love lithium stocks, but more particularly why investors love lithium producers. From Pilbara Minerals to Allkem or Sayona Mining, many of these lithium companies have become household names for investors. But today, let's unpack the story further. To understand why investors love lithium producers, we've got to dive into the life cycle of a miner. Now, if you're not familiar with it, you can have a look at the chart here. This visual is renowned as the life cycle of a miner, but what it really does is it paints the picture from a company going all the way from the earliest stage where they own a plot of land, all the way through the exploration, development, and ultimately getting to an operating mine and production. Of course, there's a range of different activities that are highlighted here, as I'm sure you can see, whether it's digging in, discovery, getting that funding, or moving towards operations. There's really three different components during the phases that companies go through, all the way from the initial conception through to operations. The first one is called exploration. The second one is called development. And then the third one is called production. And that's when you see the producers coming online. So for the first side of it all, that's exploration. That's the most prospective side. It's also the most speculative from an investment point of view as well. If you're talking about the earlier stages, it's just when you've got tenements, you've got plots of land. The earlier stages, you're not sure what's underneath, so there's a lot of testing, obviously a lot of analysis. And then potentially, if you're lucky enough to discover something, then you go to define the resource itself. And then, of course, if you've defined the resource, you've completed your exploration phase of it, then you can move towards development. Then the development side is really when you're looking at feasibility, both feasibility of the project, feasibility of the economics. Does it actually stack up? Can you make a profit? And then are you able to get it into or move towards operation? So you've got to do things like permitting, get your finances in order. And then obviously, once you've done your development, if you've completed that successfully, then you move into production. Finally, you're able to start producing your resource, you can start bringing in your revenues, and you can get your product off to customers. Now, it sounds like quite a linear process, but of course, if you've watched these companies coming to life, it's anything but linear. Obviously, you have at one end of the funnel, a huge amount of companies that will initially start the exploration phase, and then it will filter down. And obviously, you'll only have the small number of surviving companies that will eventually make it all the way through to production. But if you do make it to production, it is a big deal. And this is why a lot of investors are watching for the producers and seeing which companies can eventually become not just a lithium producer, but producer in whichever commodity they're playing in. So today we're going to unpack three key reasons why investors love producers. But first and foremost, if you like these types of discussions, we'll be releasing a new video each and every week on the channel. So make sure you've subscribed. If you want your daily content, we've just released the Instagram where we drop daily pieces of news on the stock market and investing. So make sure you come and check the page out. Pinned comment will be the link there. Let's talk about producers. So if you want to get an understanding about who are the current producers on the ASX, names like Pilbara Minerals, PLS, or Allkem, AKE, that you might be familiar with, and of course, the newest entrant as well, Core Lithium, ASXCXO. Core Lithium just recently officially became a producer, and this attracted a lot of fanfare. Then there's other aspirants as well who are near that starting line, such as Sayona Mining, as well as Argosy Minerals, and then of course, many of the developers that you'd be familiar with as well below the line. And so with that background context, we can really think about why is it that investors love producers? Why is it so important to achieve that milestone? And I think we can really bring it back to three key points here. First and foremost, of course, once you're into production, you're bringing in revenues and consequently, you're bringing in cash flow. Well, you're hoping you're bringing in cash, but obviously with a significant amount of economic feasibility studies that you're doing throughout the development phase, barring black swan events or a significant downturn in your commodity price, you're hoping that you're going to be cash flow generative and profitable. And so once you're into production, you're bringing those revenues in and you're able to bring those profits through to the bottom line. And there's really a second component to this discussion as well. When you're during a time period where there's significantly elevated prices, of course, we saw the iron ore boom over the past couple of years, and now we're seeing it in the lithium space as well with elevated prices. If you're currently producing with those elevated prices, you're exposed to them. And obviously the margins are going to be significant during those periods, which is going to come all the way through to the bottom line. So not only is it the fact that, yes, you're bringing in revenues, but during periods of booms, you're able to get the biggest exposure to the uplift that's provided by the underlying commodity prices. On the second component of that as well, if you're into production, the project is relatively de-risked. Now, of course, this is an incremental process. As you go from exploration through to development, through to production, the project gets de-risked throughout those stages. But obviously, once you're actually into production and you're into your operative state, that's a significant de-risking event. On the other side of the coin, yes, if you're into production, there's going to be lower risk, but lower opportunities for exponential upside in terms of share price growth, because a lot of that has been priced in. Obviously, the most upside is going to come from the speculation in the earlier stages with the explorers. But obviously, if there's projects de-risked, you've done your studies and you're into production, hopefully you're looking profitable with a great growth runway ahead. This is why investors love it, because it provides that steady state and stability. And obviously, as you move forward into production and you get into that stable state, potential of dividends as well for investors, which is always exciting. And then the third one as well is the opportunity to potentially expand. There's a few different components to consider here. First and foremost, obviously, once you've got your cash flows coming through, depending on how you want to allocate that capital, you can use it to potentially expand into new areas, whether it's new projects, new regions, or the consideration of perhaps going further downstream, depending what commodities you're looking into. On the other side as well, if you think about how you bring a project all the way through from development to production, it's a different skill set. You've developed the team out, so you're going to have capabilities in-house. You're going to have the know-how, you're going to have the resources, and obviously the process flows as well, which means that it's going to be a lot easier to scale. You're not starting from a new operation when you have to build a team. You've already got a team that's done it once, and depending on where you want to expand into, you're able to leverage a lot of that know-how and IP and in-house understanding to scale further. As we know, there's not a lot of companies that go all the way through from exploration to production. So if you've got that understanding in-house, it is a big tick. And obviously the capabilities are very difficult to replicate easily. And so to get an idea about what these expansive margins and significant cash flow generative opportunities can look like, we can have a look at a company like Pilbara Minerals. As we know, ASX PLS has been one of the leading lights and a real bellwether for the broader lithium sector on the ASX. They're obviously looking further downstream as well, which we've talked about as an opportunity once you're into production. But we have a look at their FY22 numbers and they're absolutely mind-blowing. If you have a look at them, $800 million plus cash at bank, over $700 million of net cash, $1 billion plus of revenue during FY22, which was absolutely incredible. But then when you're looking at profitability, $800 million plus of EBITDA and over $500 million, $500 million in net profit after tax. These are absolutely incredible numbers. Now, of course, yes, it's worth noting that these elevated lithium prices are not going to stay at these peaks forever. But that's really a component about what we talked about before, which is the fact that if you're into production, you get the exposure to those prices in the here and now. And as we've seen from the BMX auction results from Pilbara that they pioneered over the past few months, it's not like the prices are rushing downwards immediately. We've seen $8,000 USD for SC6 over the past BMX auctions. They've been resolute, they've been resilient. And as we've talked about, it's not easy to bring lithium projects online. It's not a quick process. It takes time. This is why we've seen the supply shortfall continuing through. Obviously, depending on which forecasters you're looking at, the supply shortfall is anticipated to expand. Some houses have talked about a potential perpetual lithium deficit. And so there is the potential to see these elevated lithium prices. And obviously those that are either in production at the moment or potentially looking to bring production online may be the beneficiaries of this moving forward. If you want to see more videos discussing the market, here's another one you can check out. As mentioned, come say hello on the Instagram for your daily stock market news and insights. Big thanks for joining us. For now, stay well and happy investing.